My name is Jennifer Isaac. I'm the External Relations Supervisor here at WorkLink Employment Society on the West Shore. And I'm just going to share my screen with you for a moment so that you can have a look at our agenda for the day. So I'll just do that. And is that being shared? Oh, wait, sorry. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So we're planning to run our session until 1 p.m. today, and we will have our welcome and our land acknowledgement. After that, we will have a presentation by Stacey Mullaney, who is our wage subsidy specialist here at WorkLink, and Tracy Gilks, our program services specialist, will also be contributing to the presentation. Following that, we will have questions and answers, and then some concluding remarks. So, and please also realize that our schedule is fluid and we will adjust it accordingly. I would like to thank everybody for their help today, especially Brianna Norgard, who is our marketing technician and who has made all the arrangements for this to be broadcast through Zoom. So thank you everybody for being here. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. And the WorkLink Employment Society recognizes the territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on which our offices are located. We are proud to provide employment-related services to these nations and to the people of Chinooh, Sooke, and Pacheedaht First Nations. We offer free services to job seekers and to employers. Clients must register first, and they can contact us at 250-478-9525 to register. After the presentation is over today, all the participants will receive an email and more information on our programs and services. So don't worry about taking too comprehensive of notes, because we'll help you out with that. Okay, so thank you again, everybody, for being here. And I would like to introduce Stacey Mullaney, our wage subsidy specialist with WorkLink, who is going to make her presentation now. Thank you, Stacey.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so you can see what I'm looking at. There we go. So everybody should be seeing the presentation now. Yeah?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Perfect. So I don't know who is familiar with wage subsidy and who has never heard of it before and where we are, but this info session is meant to be fairly comprehensive to cover all of the eligibility criteria and the program overview. And even if you are familiar with the program, there have been some changes very recently. So we'll cover a little bit of those as well. And hopefully everybody will have a really good, solid understanding of the program, who is eligible and how to use the program. So the objective of wage subsidy has traditionally been an incentive for employers to hire a person that they would normally not, due to a lack of experience required for the job. So this is an instance where, say you interview somebody and you really like their attitude, you really like the energy that they bring to the table, but maybe they're new to the field, they don't have much experience. Maybe they're a new graduate, maybe for whatever, maybe they're switching careers. We see a lot of people creating new opportunities for themselves by switching careers with wage subsidy. And it's just like you like them, but you know it's going to take a little bit of time to bring them up to speed.
No sé si las enfermeras tengan WhatsApp. O sea, me dieron los teléfonos de ellas, pero no
can
sé
we
si
maybe
tienen
mute
WhatsApp.
everybody so that they're there? Thank you. Sorry. So yeah, it's meant to sort of reimburse you for those costs of hiring those new employees that maybe will take a bit of time to get brought up to speed. So we reimburse a portion of the wages for generally up to 24 weeks. We can also provide supports to reduce work-related disability barriers to new hires. So for example, I've had clients in the past who have been sight impaired, and we've been able to provide them with keyboards that light up so that they can perform their work better. So sometimes employers maybe don't have the resources or the ability to do that. So that's something that we can offer as well. And for the employees, for the people that are being hired with the service, it's excellent for them because they gain really valuable work experience, and it really can help them transition to new career paths. I work with quite a few people who have been doing the same thing for quite some time. And then for whatever reason, like people who have been doing manual labor, for example, they reach a point where this physically they can't do it anymore, but they have so much knowledge and skills. This program is a great way for them to take that knowledge and that skills and those transferable skills and just transition them to a new field. For the employer eligibility, there are a few key pieces that we do check for. One of the biggest ones is that you are truly registered as a business in BC with an active WorkSafe BC account that is in good standing. And this is one of the first things that we check when you apply to the program. I actually go and I make sure that you have been paying your premiums and that you are not delinquent. The reason for this is we need to know that the people that we're supporting are going to be in a safe environment. And if they do get hurt, that they're going to be protected if that happens. So it's imperative that you do have that coverage, and we will absolutely check for that. In relation to that, be compliant with all applicable legislation: Employment Standards Act, Workers' Compensation Act, Income Tax Act, Employment Insurance Act. All of that needs to be above board as well. So the hours that a person would be working on a wage subsidy, they do need to be true insurable hours. So they need to have the deductions being taken off, and there needs to be like no money under the table, basically. It needs to be all above board. We also ask for at least 2 million third-party liability coverage. The job needs to primarily be based and performed in BC. This is kind of new with a lot of remote learning and remote work happening right now. The pay needs to be reasonable and competitive for the position that somebody is going to be offered. And we are not able to work with 100% commission jobs. We can work with somebody who gets a base salary and commission on top, but if it was just pure commission, we would not be able to structure a contract based on that. The reason for it is we are reimbursing for the wage, and with commission, there's just such volatility and variation with it. It's just not something we can accommodate. And you also need to keep fairly accurate records verifying payroll, and this would be part of the claims process that we will get into a little bit later. We ask that you need to be arm's length from the Work BC Employment Services contractor and potential employee. So this means you can't hire your own relatives using wage subsidy. We just want to make sure that there's no nepotism happening and that everything is above board. The intent is for full-time permanent work, so that there is a little bit of flexibility with that. We've kind of characterized it as between 28 and 40 hours per week. The big piece with the full-time work is that it should be sustainable for the person that is entering into that position. And that's kind of within reason, up to their discretion. I mean, there are people out there who work 28 hours per week, and that is more than enough for them. They make enough money, they feel sustained in it. So in that case, if it was coming from the client for there to be fewer hours, then we could certainly put that through. In terms of the permanency of the employment, I have done wage subsidies in the past for contracts that we know are going to be temporary or short-term. One of the most recent ones was for a maternity leave. We just need to be really clear going into it that that's the parameters of the position, and it needs to be giving that person who's entering into that contract sufficient skills and knowledge to then take what they learned from that position and apply it to their next career. So they sort of have that trajectory of career growth. So we can also do part-time and even reduced hours. So this would be for somebody who maybe had some barriers to employment and could only work part-time, as long, again, as it's coming from that client's perspective, from the potential employee's perspective. That's the person that needs to be saying, I need part-time. A big piece we also look for is confirmation that none of your existing employees are being laid off to create room for the wage subsidy position. There's nobody that's experiencing a reduction in hours. There's no labor disputes going on that's creating the need or the opportunity for wage subsidy. We want to make sure that your current staff are also going to be supported and protected when you bring somebody on with a wage subsidy. I don't know if anybody in the call applies to any of these, but the Government of BC or Government of Canada are not eligible for wage subsidy, and that includes Crown corporations. Public sector as well would not be able to access the program. So that would be hospitals, municipalities, school boards, public universities, and health authorities. In terms of filling a position that is caused by a layoff, The trick with this is if you have a position, and especially now during COVID, a lot of people are being laid off just because business has changed and sometimes we're not able to do what we could do anymore. So if you have laid off somebody and you offer them that position and they refuse it, you can then hire somebody else with a wage subsidy as long as that person has refused. Another piece right now, there's a federal wage subsidy, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. You cannot claim that and the Work BC subsidy at the same time. So if you are claiming the federal subsidy, you would not be able to access the provincial one at this time. To my knowledge, though, that one is only going, the federal one is only going till June. So realistically, that's going to be before we know it. In terms of some additional considerations, you can have a maximum of 5 active Work BC wage subsidies at any one time. And this is per your CRA business number. And in terms of the calendar year, you can have a maximum of 10 subsidized employees. For employee eligibility, this is one where there's been some major changes recently. This traditionally had been a program that was attached to EI, meaning that somebody either needed to be on an active claim or have what we call reach back status, where they had been on a claim for the last 5 years. That has now been removed from eligibility. And as long as somebody is legally able to work in BC, so meaning they're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, and as long as they are unemployed, and for our definition, that means working less than 20 hours per week, and as long as they're not attending college and university full-time, they are eligible for wage subsidy. So this applies to the person that you're looking to hire. So for you, it's if you come across somebody, and you can do that. There's a few different streams to access wage subsidy. So if you're interviewing somebody and it's quite clear that they're working either part-time or that they're unemployed, and you did want to hire them with wage subsidy, they would then be eligible for the program as long as they fit these criteria here. In terms of the duration and the rate of wage subsidy, this is another piece that has changed quite a bit lately. It's become a sliding scale of reimbursement, and there's a few different tiers that somebody can be. The majority of people are going to be what we call Work BC clients, and for these folks, the subsidy rates are as follows. So for the first 8 weeks, you get 50% reimbursed on the wages of the employee, and that's up to a maximum of $500 per week. And then for the second 8 weeks, so this would be weeks 9 to 16, it would drop down to 25%, up to $250 per week. And then for the final 8 weeks, it would be 15%, up to $150 per week. There's also a second tier for priority clients. So these are defined as youth, so 16 to 30, and then persons that have PWD status or persons with disability status. So for them, the rates are a little bit different. It starts up at 75% for the first 8 weeks. Then it would go down to 50%, up to $500, and then down to 25% for the final 8 weeks. So this is one of the biggest changes that we saw with the new policy coming through. But it's still quite a bit. So for a Work BC client, the maximum subsidy for the entire duration is $7,500, and for a priority client, the maximum subsidy for the full 24 weeks would be $12,000. So that's still quite a bit of money reimbursed to you. We'll cover a little bit about the process now. So there's sort of 3 main ways that a wage subsidy match can be made. We do have existing Work BC clients who are eligible for the program. They've gone through the orientation, they know a little bit about it, and they're out there actively job searching with a marketing letter that tells employers all about wage subsidy. And this happens quite often where they're out there, they're doing their own job search process, and then I would get contacted by an employer based off of that marketing letter that has been provided. And then from there, we would build the contract. I get quite a few calls from employers who have heard of the program or have even heard of Work BC and are just a little curious about what we do and what we offer. So there's times where an employer will contact me and say, I have this job that's available. These are the details. Here's the job description. Do you have any clients that you're working with that can maybe fill this for me? And in those cases, I'm happy to make that connection. If I do have an eligible client that is suitable for that position, I would happily refer them to you. And then the process would be very similar to what you do already when you're hiring. So you would be responsible for the interviewing and for the reference checks and everything you would normally do when you're onboarding someone. The third way is an employer will find somebody that is eligible for wage subsidy through their own endeavors with their job search, or sorry, with their employee search. And then they recognize this person may be eligible and they contact me. And that is called an employer identified wage subsidy. So with this piece, an important piece I want to mention right now is as much as I would love to be a full recruiter and find somebody for you that would fill your needs, I do not have the capacity to do that at this time. I do have an existing client database basically that I have access to that I'm already working with through WorkBC, but I'm not able to go out and sort of hunt somebody down for you. If they don't already exist as a WorkBC client, then I don't have the capacity to find you someone else who's not already affiliated with our services. So once we have that employer-client match, the next part is for you to complete an online application. And we will quickly go over this and a little bit of what that looks like. And then there's a supplementary document that I would send to you via email that is quite straightforward, that just sort of elaborates on the training plan that we're going to be needing to sort of support this person, because a big piece of wage subsidy is it's meant to be a training opportunity for the person being hired to really learn some new skills. So we really want to see that on paper as to what are they going to be learning and how and when, and ideally a timeline is excellent to see. So once we have the employer application, and I should say it's not daunting at all. Like even the paper one, it's 2 pages, and a lot of it is literally just demographics about your business, the name of the position, the wage, details about the job. It's very straightforward. I don't want anybody thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be so onerous. It's going to take me 6 months to apply for this. It's not even worth it. It's not like that at all. It's very straightforward. It's very easy for people to do. Once we have the application, we all kind of chat and we talk about what is the wage going to look like? Has it already been agreed to? Because a lot of the times you're already in communications with the person that you want to hire, and maybe there's already been a discussion of wage. So we talk about that all together, and we nail down a start date for that individual. Then I would build the contract based on the specific situation. And a really big piece of this is that we need that contract signed before they start work. If you remember back to the criteria for somebody to be eligible for this program from the client's perspective, from the employee's perspective, one of the big ones was that they were unemployed. So the second that person starts a full-time job with your company, they no longer click that box and they're no longer eligible for wage subsidy, and we can no longer access the funding. So it's super important that you follow the process correctly and make sure you connect with me and get confirmation that we are good to go and the contract is built before that person starts their job. As long as everything is smooth with this, it can be quite a quick process. If I have what I need from the employer and if the potential employee is on board with the wage and everything looks good, I can do this in a day. Like if you get me something, like it can be quite quick. So there's no need to worry that it's going to take a really long time. I recognize that people are often quite eager to get to work, and employers, if you're hiring, you obviously have a need for somebody. So I do my absolute very best to turn this around as quick as I possibly can. I just want to remind you again that the contract does need to be signed before the employee starts, or you will not be eligible for subsidy. So just keep that in mind with this process. You absolutely need to connect with me and make sure that contract is built before we move forward. So how do you actually apply? It's really simple. So there's a new streamlined online application process, which is so wonderful to use. It's so easy. And this is the website here. And I can share this presentation. I can share the details of this with everybody so that you all know where to go. And then when you go here, you're going to have 2 choices. One of them would be for you to apply with your identified employee. So this is when you do have somebody in mind, you've interviewed them, you want to hire them, you want to see if they're eligible for wage subsidy. And then that's the route that you would go for that. On another side of the coin, if you do not have somebody in mind and you just want to get aligned with your local WorkBC center just to see who are they working with right now? What clients do they have who may be eligible for the program that already exists that's suitable for me? Then you can choose that option as well. And then you would be connected with your the WorkBC center closest to you to hopefully find somebody to fill that position for you. You need some very basic information about your business. So the contact information, the address. You will need your CRA business number because you have to punch that in. Your WorkSafe number, again, remember that's something that we do check for, so it will need to be included on the application. details about the position, including the anticipated start date, the hours per week, and the wage. And again, just another reminder that you cannot start that person until we've spoken and have that contract ready. So this is what the website actually looks like when you navigate to it. So here's the two different options: the apply with your own identified employee or applied to be matched with a WorkBC client. So this is when you've interviewed somebody and you have them in mind for the position. And then this is where you have a job, but no person. So the example that I'm going to give is this identified employee example. So this is what the first page will look like. And this is where you're given the choice of, are you already working with a WorkBC center? And you can say yes or no. So there are cases where people are already working with somebody who is not affiliated with the center that's closest to them. And if that is your case, if you already have an existing relationship with somebody who is out of your catchment, you have the option to continue that relationship with that person. So you can click yes, and then a drop-down menu will appear and you can choose the WorkBC center that you already have that connection with. Then this is where you start entering the actual data about your business. So the name of the organization, the business number, the address. It does need to be validated before you can continue. Then it wants a little bit more detail about the actual positions. So type of sector, type of industry, how many employees. You can see it's all very straightforward, and it's literally just a click and you're pretty much done. So we ask, are you displacing anybody? Is there a labor dispute? These are the important ones to answer because these will affect your eligibility for the program. So answer them truthfully. Don't try to lie so you can access the funding, because that wouldn't be good for anybody. What's going on? Oops, I went too far. And then the last page would be just a declaration just saying that the information you've provided is true and accurate. And you're acknowledging that that this is your electronic signature and that you know that you're not lying and everything is above board. Oops. And then you'll just get this little thank you saying, yes, your application has been received. And then it will immediately go into our system, and it literally is instantaneous. This actually happened just last week. We had an employer apply and I was on the phone with them within 5 minutes, and they were surprised that it was so quick, but it really is that fast. So after you do apply, just wait to hear from me before you move forward, because I will need a little bit more information. Primarily, there wasn't much opportunity for you to put in very many details about the work experience plan in that previous online application process. So I really do need to know how you're going to support this individual. And if you have an eligible hire in mind, part of the process is you entering their email address. So they are then sent an email so that they can do their part, because we do need them registered as a client so that we have a case to attach the wage subsidy to. So that's one of the places where there could be a bit of delay if that individual that you want to hire is not really on the ball with registering. Then that can slow us down a little bit, because I cannot move forward until they are actually a client and we can serve them that way. So it's the onus would be on you then to sort of light a fire under them and say, hey, we want to use this program, we want to hire you. The sooner you can get this done, the sooner you can start work. And if you were in the position where you had a job but no person, then I will connect with you and get more details and see if I do have anybody that may be a fit for you. A big piece of wage subsidy is actually monitoring the contracts. This ensures that we're actually staying on course with what we've agreed to. So pre-COVID, this would include at least one on-site visit. And I'm honestly a little sad that I don't get to do this more, because that was my favorite part, was going out and seeing everybody live in action, doing their jobs and actually seeing them in the thick of it. For now, I'm doing them all virtually. So it would be through Zoom or it would be over the phone that we would be connecting. I do these confidentiality. So I meet with the employer individually and the client individually, because I really want an open, honest place where people can speak truthfully. And if there is something that's bothering them, I want to give both of you the option to let me know what's going on so that we can hopefully resolve it before it gets out of hand. So should there be any disputes, I'm certainly here to help smooth those over, because it's always best, if we can, to catch something before it escalates and gets to the point where that person either wants to leave or you want to let them go. I would much prefer to have it brought to my attention sooner than later so that we can try to smooth it over and fix it before it does fall apart. When we do these monitors, I'm going to verify that there is adequate training and support being provided to that individual. We also will confirm that the job being performed actually matches what we put in the agreement. There can be times where there is changes, particularly with smaller companies. People tend to end up wearing a lot of hats, and that's not a problem. The consideration is if the job does deviate too far from what we said it would be in the agreement, we just need to write an amendment. So we would just go back and we would amend the agreement to change the details of the position, and then we would all sign it again, and then everything would be fine. Yeah, but we do need to just check in and make sure that everything is going smoothly. So the next piece is a little bit about how to submit claim forms when you actually are in a wage subsidy. So for this piece, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy because she is the one that processes these claim forms. So she will quickly run through the process for how to do this. Oh, we can't hear you, Tracy.
There, that's better.
There we go.
Thanks, Stacy. Yes, so once everything's in place, it's an existing claim. We do request that you send in your claim forms on a regular basis. Usually once a month is ideal. The really important part for these claims is that the pay period that you're sending it in for, that your claim form, your pay stubs, and the timesheet. So there's always 3 documents that you need to send in if you're submitting claims. And those 3 documents all have to be for the exact same time period. It's really important when we go to reconcile these claims that what you are claiming for hours that this client has worked, that there's documentation to support that, basically, because the ministry also requires us to reconcile and show that we're paying these wages based on what you're claiming they're working. So the documentation is important, that the time frame matches, so the dates match, the hours match. On those forms as well, there's some spots for the employer and the employee to sign off. It's important that we have those signatures on there. Another important part is that it's just one claim form that you're using for those pay periods. There's spots for 5 weeks to be listed on there. We can't accept 2 or 3 claim forms for multiple periods of pays. So it's important we get one claim form per claim. And the last part really is there's a section in the middle of the claim form. It asks to detail what the client's responsibilities are, the job they're doing, excuse me, and it also asks for feedback on the client's progress. So this is what Stacy was just mentioning a few minutes ago about this is a really great spot that when you send in the claim, if there's any, excuse me, challenges that you might be having with the employee, this is a good method of reporting that, and we can be alerted to that, and then Stacy can again offer to mediate and to sort out any confusion or challenges that we might be having with this match. We want to make it successful for everybody. So important the documentation comes in complete. We're really motivated when we receive these claims. We really work hard to get the turnaround time to be quick, and as long as the paperwork comes in and everything matches, everything's easy to reconcile, it really speeds up the repayment and the reimbursement portion, where we get that money right back to you as quickly as we possibly can. Because of COVID, obviously our payment system, we're using either EFT payment forms or e-transfers for payments for clients. And I think that covers it. That's about it for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Tracy. And actually, I do have, oh, come on, there we go. So this is what a claim form would look like when you submit them. So you would put the period covered by the claim up at the top, and then this part's pretty straightforward, the information. I will mention here, in terms of the mandatory employment related costs, we do not reimburse for those. We just reimburse for the wages. So this is the MERCs. Those would be the employer portion of CPP and all of those other deductions. we do not reimburse for those. It's just for the wages. Here's the piece where you can fill in a little bit more detail about what the person is learning, and then the signature from the employer. So the signature here, it does not need to be the legal signing authority for your company. It can be anybody in your company who you give permission to sign for on this claim form. Oftentimes the person who has legal signing authority may not have the capacity or the time to be able to take care of these claim forms in a timely manner. So you can get your bookkeeper, you can get somebody from your accounting department, you can get your administrative assistant to take care of this for you. As long as it's submitted correctly, we should be able to turn around pretty quickly with the reimbursement. So this is kind of a very busy slide that shows you absolutely everything with the claim forms. It just basically to reiterate that the hours match. So in this case, like this is the first pay period up here for these 2 weeks that are 37.5 hours. Here's the corresponding timesheet that reinforces the actual amount that has been paid. You'd see that everything's congruent. This is what we're looking for. The hours worked on the claim form actually match what the person worked and what they were paid. And if all of this is in line and it all looks good, then like Tracy said, we're very quick with these. We turn them around basically the next day if we can, as long as everything is in order for us to do so. So we want to expose this to you now just so that you see it. And then when the time comes, if you do enter into a wage subsidy, it's not as daunting to you, because this is a piece that sometimes employers are a little scared of, because it looks challenging, but it's really quite straightforward once you sit down and take a look at it. And I'm more than happy to support you with this to make sure that you are submitting properly so that you get your money faster, because that's helpful for everybody. So the next piece of the presentation here, I'm going to address some questions that I get quite frequently about the program. So for those of you that maybe have been thinking of questions that you have, perhaps they're covered in here. So let's see. And if not, we do have time at the end to address the questions. So the first one is how many hours per week are required for a wage subsidy position? And as we said earlier, the expectation is that it's going to be full-time. So for our purposes, I've labeled that as between 28 and 40 hours. Part-time would be a possibility, again, as long as it's coming from that potential employee's perspective, as long as it's them asking for the fewer hours, or if it's already a position that is part-time and the client is okay with that, then we could certainly put that forward as well. But ideally it is intended for full-time hires. So can I hire somebody on a temporary or casual basis with wage subsidy? In terms of temporary, like again, just reinforcing that we can do, it is intended for permanent hires. However, again, the temporary contract position, if it's considered enough that that person is going to get experience in a new field that they can then leverage to move forward in their career, as long as we know going in that it is going to be temporary, then that's perfectly fine if we all agree to that. The big piece is that they get enough experience and skills to build their career and their growth. So I'd really be looking to make sure that the training plan is pretty tight with that, and that the support is there for that person to gain the skills needed to advance their career. In terms of casual positions, those are not suitable for wage subsidy. There's just too much variety with that. And when we build the contract, we really do need to pin down a specific number that we're asking for reimbursement. So on a casual basis, we're just not able to do that. So we could not use casual positions with wage subsidy. Can I receive the federal wage subsidy and the Work BC wage subsidy at the same time? And no, you cannot. They cannot be used at the same time. That puts you in a position where you're actually profiting off of wage subsidies. So the federal one, I think it's 50%. If you got ours, that was also 50%. You now have somebody working for you for free. That is something that the government would not like to have happen. So you are not able to access both at the same time. I want to hire someone who is already working full-time. Can I hire them with wage subsidy? So this one is a no. If you interview somebody, if you like somebody, if they already have a full-time job somewhere else, they cannot leave that job to start a wage subsidy position. The purpose of the program is for people who are unemployed or underemployed. So people who are already working are not eligible for services and not eligible for the program. They do need to fit the criteria to be eligible for Work BC services in general. Can I vary the hours or offer a range for a wage subsidy position? This does come up sometimes because some people like their job, it just doesn't, there's this variety in it. It's just not always 40 hours per week. And this, just to reiterate, we do build the contract around a specific number of hours, which sets the allocated funding amount. So if you say somebody's going to work 35 to 40 hours per week, we would really need to pick one of those two numbers. If you think it's going to more likely be more often 40 hours per week, I would encourage you to go in at that number because that means that you would have more subsidy to draw from. If you put it in at 35 hours per week and they consistently work 40, then we would still reimburse them for those 40 hours, but those funded dollars are going to get eaten up much quicker. And it won't cover the full 24 weeks of the subsidy period. Can I give an employee a raise who is on a WorkBC wage subsidy? And you absolutely can. However, the additional amount, the raise that you give them is not part of the reimbursed wages for wage subsidies. So if you start them off at $20 per hour, partway through, you're like, I want to increase this person's wage to $22 per hour. We would be continuing to reimburse on that $20 per hour. So for employers, like if you foresee a wage raise happening within those first 3 to 6 months, it may be in your best interest to, if you intended to use wage subsidy, to start them at the higher rate so that you get subsidy for those that higher amount. Because if you increase it partway through, that is not covered by the program. What about overtime? We do reimburse based on the hours worked, including overtime. However, the rate that we pay out is in relation to that initial wage value that we had put in. So again, if somebody's working $20 per hour, that is what we are reimbursing on, even if their overtime rate is at a 1.5. We're still reimbursing just on that $20 per hour. And basically the result of somebody working overtime is that we use the funded dollars quicker because we're reimbursing for the hours that they actually work. Do we pay for stat days and vacation pay? So when your employee is eligible for stat pay, we would reimburse for that. But if you're the type of employer who pays percentages of vacation pay on each check, usually it's 4%, that is not reimbursed. It's only applied to the wages. So that's everything that I have for now. So I'd